Welcome to Hail to the Podcast, flagship podcast of the Maize Blue Review. You can find us at michigan.rivals.com. If you are not subscribed, head over. Now is the time. We have you covered spring to summer with our spring promo code UMSpring23. 1 month for free. Buy 1 month, get 4 free. So, yep, our spring practice hub is already up. We have tons of position battle previews, team previews, and intel's already coming into our guy, Josh. So make sure head over to michigan.rivals.com. Now is the time to subscribe. Pay for 1 month, get 4 free using promo code UMSpring23. Otherwise, if you're listening to us on Spotify or any of the other podcast streams, make sure you're subscribed. Appreciate you. If you're on YouTube, watching us live or playback, same thing. Subscribe, notification bell. Make sure you can jump in when we are live. All right, housekeeping out of the way. Joined tonight, two main guys here. Josh Henschke, publisher, Maize Blue Review. How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. Doing great. Happy to be here. Need to start podcasting more often.
Well, now you've got a super beast computer, or at least a stylish computer in the background running something. So
yeah, exactly. It's running something. I don't know what it is yet, but it's running something.
I'm doing that envious thing. I'm making fun of you when I'm actually like super jealous because that's badass. But all right. And our Mr. Do It All, cover it all, the wizard, Brock Heilig. How you doing, buddy?
Doing fabulous. Just got back from a good spring break and ready to get back into some coverage and some school at the same time. So
I am too old to remember what spring break is, I think. Like, oh God, where'd you go? Did you do anything cool or literally took a break?
I probably spent more time on the U of M campus than a lot of the Michigan students break. So I was at Yost on Friday and Saturday, and it was a good time.
That is still my favorite building, I think, on campus.
It's just like, it's so cool.
It's unbelievable. The photo, like when you got in there, it took that picture going out towards the window. It's gorgeous, man. Yeah. Just such a cool facility. So, all right. Well, we're going to dive right into the hot topic, right now, which is obviously Michigan basketball. I feel like we've had this same type of conversation multiple times, but the regular season is over. We have another set of missed, huge opportunities, right? So the Illinois game goes double overtime. They were up 7 at one point towards the end of that one. And then Indiana goes to overtime. That was even crazier because what was it, down 14 and up 12, right? That was a pretty crazy swing. But I guess, Brock, I'm going to start with you on this one. Before we get into like the incoming scenarios and what they have to do next and blah, 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 we kept talking about these being must-win games and the range of outcomes between potentially not even having to play in the play-in versus being, 8th, 9th, 10th team out. How are you feeling watching these games? Like it's almost, again, I felt like it was the same movie over and over again, but they played better, but also the same story, man.
It's getting repetitive, and I feel like a lot of Michigan fans are at this point just sitting down to watch like their worst nightmare unfold again and again and again. And it's just getting to the point where I don't know how long a lot of these people can handle it. And covering the team, it's like, I mean, you don't actually write the story before it happens, but these games aren't a surprise anymore. And
we could have copy and pasted a few of them. Let's be honest. Like it's been so similar, right?
Yeah. The Indiana and the Illinois games, it was basically the same exact game, and just the jerseys of the opponent were switched from Illinois to Indiana, and you could have played the same game, and no one would have known the difference. And so it's getting really tough for them, and they've put themselves in this position, and they're gonna have to get themselves out of it.
Josh, would it be better in a weird way to just like lose outright? Like there's some sick feeling to like Michigan having a chance or even be in a position where I could argue they should have won and then not winning, right? Like losing that way, 8 or 9 times this year? It's almost worse in my mind, right? If you're down 10 the whole game, it's like, I mean, Indiana, if you lose to Indiana at Assembly Hall on senior night, that wouldn't have been that shocking. They're arguably playing the best ball in the Big Ten right now, right? Losing at Illinois, they weren't favored to win, but losing that way over and over all year, so frustrating.
Yeah, and it also gives kind of a false sense of that, this team is looking like it's ready to turn a corner, right? Like it's like, oh, hey, this team took Purdue down to the wire. This it means they're turning a corner, where they're finally getting it right. And that's kind of been the theme of this team all year. It's that you're just waiting for the moment where they figure it out. I think consistency and just a steady level of play has really plagued this team all year. And it's funny because this isn't a bad basketball team. It's not a bad team, which is the crazy part about all of this, is that, they're a good team that just isn't playing good basketball together, and good basketball consistently, I should say. And that's kind of the part where, people want to just scream and pull their hair out, because they can't seem to do the most simple tasks right. They make key mistakes and key moments. Just basic stuff that that gets hammered in you in high school, that they're struggling with. So yeah, I mean, I guess no matter how you lose, it's a loss is still bad. But yeah, I mean, I think you kind of left with this bad taste in your mouth all year, is that it's oh, they were so close, but that doesn't matter at the end of the day. I mean, at the end of the day, if you won or you lost, and they couldn't get it done in this stretch here. 2 games that they couldn't afford to lose, and against Illinois and Indiana, both in overtime. It's you just got to learn to close out games. And I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you coach that into players to close out games, but it's definitely an issue. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how you prefer to lose, but I mean, both of them are frustrating.
The coaching thing, like coaching not to lose that way, I think you're hitting on it. Like, part of this dynamic kind of reminds me of Michigan football 2019 and 2020, where it's like, it feels like the team believes they're going to lose too. Like, we're watching this thinking, oh, I've seen this before, they're going to lose it, right? It feels like the team believes that too. I remember, I can't remember if it was Nick Eubanks or Khalid Hill. I think it was Eubanks, the Wisconsin fumble where they drove down and Ben Mason ran it from the 7 and fumbled. And I think it was Eubanks, but he said something along the lines of like, we were like, here we go again. We knew it was over right then. Right. And I was like, a player's thinking this way? Like, you know what I mean? When Kobe got that rebound, I put out some tweet like where I just wish Kobe knew he was that dude now. Right.
Yeah.
He got that rebound and was immediately looking to get rid of the ball. He looks kind of at T. Will and then throws it in the back of Hunter.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for him. I'm not trying to pick on him. But like moments like that, Brock, stick out to me where it's like, what? Like,
yeah.
Nobody has that. Like, don't be wrong, Hunter hit that dagger against Wisconsin, right? I'm not saying plays haven't happened, but like to lose that way, is that coaching? What is that?
It could be, and I think it goes along with a lot of the late game woes that have plagued Michigan all year, and it seems like they just don't have anyone to turn to. And I've been tweeting out too. I've been saying, like, why isn't Kobe Buffkin getting a touch late in the game when he scored, I think I saw today, 10 games in a row of 13 or more points. And
he's been lights out, man.
He has. And he went on that incredible run, 8 straight points against Illinois. And even yesterday, he was fantastic. And they just don't look to him at the end of the game. And then finally, in overtime, he gets the ball. And sure, he was at half court and probably a tough shot regardless of whoever takes it. But his first instinct is to pass when he gets the ball. And he's the guard. Like, he's the guy who should be looking to take the shot and to win the game, not passing to the 7'1" big man who, like you said, Trevor, did make the shot against Wisconsin, but that's Buffkin's shot. And so, yeah. And what's weird to me is, like Josh, you were kind of saying, like, this team is good. And going into the season, a lot of people didn't really know what Michigan had. They had Dickinson. That was the constant. And Jet Howard comes in and he plays his way into, basically, he's a surefire first rounder at this point, and Buffkin's blossomed into, some people project him as a first rounder too. And so it's really weird how you have a former All-American and 2 projected first round picks, and and Doug McDaniel, who's been incredible as a freshman, and they just can't seem to put it together. And like you said, Trevor, maybe they just think they're going to lose it at the end, and they just really don't believe that they can close out these tough games.
Listen to this stretch for Kobe. All right, I'll do since Michigan State, but honestly, I could probably go further. Right, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 14-2 against Rutgers, 28-8 against Wisconsin, 23-6 against Illinois, 19-6 against Indiana, and he missed 3 free throws in that entire span. Like, yeah, dude's been incredible, man. And and you know, Jet coming back from the, I know people have frustration with like Jet's game and gaps and how it relates to a lottery pick. We could talk about that forever, how the NBA drafts on potential, right? We've talked about that forever. Well, we could come back and learn they don't care about that, man. The dude can shoot threes. They'll figure the rest of it out. That's why he's up there so high. And yeah, Kobe playing into it, you know, potentially being a first rounder, like you said. So I think that's obvious. Like the bench play hasn't been there this year, but like this is a pretty top loaded team. Is that all it is? Is like they just can't rely on other guys outside of the 4 that we've mentioned with Hunter, Doug, Kobe.
Yeah, Michigan had 2 bench points yesterday. They had,
God, that's insane.
They had 2 from I don't even remember who scored them, but
Cheddar maybe.
Cheddar had 2. He was in the starting lineup, so they had 4 points outside of McDaniel, Buffkin, Howard,
right.
and Dickinson.
Yep.
Cheddar scored 2, and someone else came. It may have been Terrace who had a bucket, but yeah, 2 bench points is not going to cut it in the Big Ten.
That's been a consistent theme all year, though. I mean, they just haven't had bench production. Yeah. You know, I think, you know, I wrote it today. It's that, you know, I think Michigan's transfer portal luck has kind of run dry a little bit. I mean, they relied so much on a guy like Shawnee Brown to come off the bench and give you some solid minutes to spell guys, but they don't have anyone that can spell anyone. I mean, yeah, they have bodies, but you know, you're not supposed to just have warm bodies out there on the floor. You're supposed to have guys that can give you something. And, you know, I mean, 2 points, they've given you nothing. You know, they basically essentially have given you nothing. And that's kind of been one of the major storylines for this team too, is that, you know, they've had leads and starters go off the floor, and, you know, you want your bench to maintain or at least or add on to your lead. But, you know, so many times this year, these leads have evaporated quickly to, you know, where Michigan had a double-digit lead, you know, and a timeout on the floor, and now it's a single-digit lead, or, you know, it's tied, or even worst case, a team is, you know, taking the lead from them with the bench group out. And again, I don't know how you fix that. I mean, do you address it with the portal? And, you know, they have scholarship issues right now. I mean, they're full, so they're going to have guys leave. Which is
that where the indictment on Juwan, though? Is that where we start to go, like, I understand Frankie Collins leaving maybe wasn't in the plans, right? Obviously, Llewellyn getting hurt, not in the plans. We all know Terrence Shannon was supposed to be here. That was part of it, right? Like, I get that leash. You have a full roster, and how many of them are empty seats?
Yeah,
at this point, right? So, like, are you going to ask a bunch of dudes to leave the program next year?
You might have to. There might be some firm handshakes given, like, hey, thanks, but you got to go, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, the fact that Barnes is apparently unplayable, right? And Cheddar is what he is, right? I think Reed and Doug deserve massive credit for what they've done as freshmen, because nobody expected them to do that. And they coming in probably didn't think that was going to be their role either. Kobe's development, I think, is significant. I think Jet, I don't like the Houston comparisons. I don't think that's fair. I can see where it comes from, but I think Jet was more consistent, and we knew what Jet was going to be in terms of
far more consistent.
Yeah, and scoring versus defense and whatever. But yeah, the fact that you've got nobody, man, right?
Yeah,
like
it's really weird to me how over the course of the season it started out and the bench was deep, but and they weren't developed or anything, but Barnes was getting minutes, and and Yo-Yo was getting minutes, and all these guys were actually playing. And then you get to the point yesterday in the regular season finale, and I think I'd have to look, but I'm pretty sure they played 6 players in the second half. I don't think Terrence Williams or Joey Baker saw the floor in the second half, and they rotated between Cheddar and Reed at the 4.
Yeah, I think Williams was at the air ball. He was benched after that and didn't come back. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gotten to the point now where it's just like they don't have anyone to even come in and give these guys a couple minutes of rest, like Josh was saying. And that's something you have to have, and they just don't.
Josh, refresh my memory a little bit, because Greg Glenn is another guy that I've seen getting talked about, but his recruitment kind of died off in terms of him being pursued by other programs towards the end, right?
Yeah. I think, maybe it's just because people thought that he was just automatically a lock to Michigan, but yeah, I mean, it almost felt like they moved on from Glenn at some point, and then kind of circled back to him late in the cycle. But his recruitment again was so quiet. I don't really know too much about it, to be honest with you, that other than the fact that the Howard family and the Glenn family, were just super close.
It's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, and it made sense for both sides to play together. So that was kind of the thing, and maybe that kind of prevented other teams from wanting to get involved because they knew it was useless. Fair. But yeah, I mean, that one, I don't really, I don't have much to add there.
You get where I'm going. So
yeah,
right,
yeah.
Well, look, the team is what it is. We can talk about next year, probably soon. Hopefully not soon, but maybe soon, right? So I guess simple yes or no first, and then we'll dig into it more. Does a win against Rutgers and Purdue get them into the tournament, Josh?
No,
Brock?
I don't think so.
If they win against
Rutgers and Purdue, does that get them in?
I think it does.
I think it does too. Yeah. Well, Rutgers, they're not going to be quad 1 anymore, though, are they?
I don't know. I just think that win over Purdue would look too good.
Yeah. I do think, as much as like we obsess over the computers and, Ken Palmatorvik and that and all of these different analytic things, it's still, I've said this, there's still people that are making these decisions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I do think, don't get me wrong, if they would have been the 2 seed, just the optics of the 2 seed of the Big Ten tournament, I think helps them massively from a human element, where being the 8 seed isn't as helpful, right? But I do think, if they're beating Rutgers and Purdue, I think they have a data argument, and I think it's going to be really hard for a committee to leave out a brand like that. But can they win those games? Can they? Rutgers, yeah, that might be one of their better wins of the year, beating Rutgers at RAC, right?
Yeah, I think that's the only game this season that they've closed on the road. And Rutgers had a really bad night that night. That kind of started, or that was, I guess, toward the beginning of
their slump,
their slump that they're in. But that should definitely be a winnable game for Michigan. And obviously, if they lose, they're done. But yeah, all eyes would, I guess, be on the Purdue game on Friday if they're able to knock off Rutgers.
Are you Big Ten championship or bust, Josh, for them to get in?
Yeah, at this point, yeah. I mean, they're going to have to win the tournament to get in. I think Penn State has a better resume, and I think they'll get in over Michigan.
That Penn State win was a killer, 100%.
Yep. And then, you can kind of make an argument for, I guess, Wisconsin in a sense. But, I think the committee would pick, if you just put Penn State, Wisconsin, and Michigan in a hat, or not in a hat, but in a line, and compared resumes, they would take Penn State's resume 10 out of 10 times, compared to the other two. So, that win they had over Rutgers at that last second layup was a killer for Michigan. And, that game against Indiana was a you had to have it. And I think that really was kind of the death knell. Maybe a win over Purdue gets them, over the hump, but you got to see what Penn State's doing in the tournament as well, because they're only going to be padding their resume. Wisconsin's in it too, and they're going to be padding their resume. So, Yeah, I just don't know if brand alone can get them in the tournament. I mean, I can see a situation where it happens, but those last 2 games they needed to have. I mean, 9-9 in the Big Ten is just not good. It's just not a pretty resume,
especially this year, right?
Yeah, their quad 1 wins. How many do they have? Like 3, 4?
I think it's 3 now. But
yeah, 3. That's terrible. That's not a good number. That's not something where you can look at and go, oh wow, this team is really showing you something. I mean, it's just not there.
I don't know if it's just been the dynamic of this year, but it's incredible like how much I don't remember feeling this way about basketball, that every game mattered this much. It really, I mean, if you're talking, I mean, the Central one's obvious. Quad 4 loss to a bottom MAC team that might be one of the worst losses in the country this year. But like, if you beat Central, pick off one of Virginia, Kentucky, UNC, right? One of those. And then maybe one of Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, all these close games. They're like a 6 seed.
Yeah.
Like, we're not even talking about this. It's just, I don't remember every little game mattering that much. I don't know, Lisa, maybe it's just the dynamic of this year, or maybe it's having a team losing the way they have been, right?
I don't know. And in the past, I think we've been kind of spoiled with the way Michigan has played. And, Michigan has had, in the past, a really good balance between veteran guys and young guys. I mean, we've seen countless times that a team that's young and, full of one and dones just don't get the job done. You got to have veteran guys. And that's kind of the indictment on Michigan, is that, and I guess it's not necessarily Juwan's fault, but they've had so many people leave, and you can make an argument, Franz is fine. Like, he had to leave. Franz had to go. But like a Caleb Houston could have been serviceable for Michigan this year. Musa could have been serviceable for Michigan this year. There's a lot of guys that, left early that you could use this year to kind of erase that youth and that growing pains that they've had because they're young and they've played young basketball. And, we've look at Purdue. Purdue's the perfect blueprint. Yep. They've got the perfect mix of young guys and guys who've been there and know what they're doing. And, there's a reason why they're the top team in the Big Ten, is because, and you lean on a guy like Zach Edey, who's, good and just big. I think it's that is not there. And I guess that it goes back to what we're talking about with the transfer portal with the misses too, because Joey Baker's seen some games and, has been basically ineffective off the bench.
We knew we hardly played at Duke.
Right. That too. And I give Llewellyn a pass because, a knee injury. I mean, that's not his fault, but you haven't done a good job scouring the portal. And maybe that's a whole credit admissions thing, whatever. That's a whole totally different topic. And, we'd be here all night, but, if you're going to go for the portal again, you have to figure something out. I mean, you have to.
Brock, we're kind of going retro back to team composition, but when Josh talks about dudes that left, he says Caleb and Musa and these guys that went to the NBA. What about the guys that left that are still in college basketball, right? Should Brandon Johns have been given a seat over Yo-Yo, a guy that maybe is going to stay in development, right?
Yeah.
Old David over at Cincy having a hell of a career, right? And I know there's more to those transfers. Okay, there's more to those things. But and the Frankie thing, same thing, another situation. But is that part of the conversation too? Like even Big Country, right? Like these kind of guys that like maybe wouldn't have had huge roles, but we've cleared space for a freshman to come in that hasn't been ready to play, or even now, even as a sophomore, like Barnes can't play.
Yeah. And even looking at like Colin Castleton too in Florida, and
oh god,
broke his hand or something, did he? But he was having a good year.
Yeah.
And you just look at all these guys, and Johns is kind of blossoming too at VCU, and it's hard not to look and be like, what if, right? Like we'd have Colin Castleton in Ann Arbor, David DeJulius, and I mean, not all of them would have stayed, but you're looking and it's like, what if they were in Ann Arbor and you wouldn't have 6 players that are playable late in the season when you're heading toward the Big Ten tournament, and it's hard not to wonder. And Colin Castleton certainly could have been a serviceable 4, I feel like, on this team, and Zeb Jackson too. That's another name we didn't bring up, and I haven't looked at what his stats have been lately, but
and again, I know there was a whole other thing going on there too. So that, like I said, it's tough to. Each situation's different, right? But just on paper, a lot of the things Beeline got knocked for, I think, in terms of like playing the long game with some of these guys. And when Howard first came in, it was kind of a mix of both, right? Like he was going to try and do long game with some guys and then bring in what was the best recruiting class in the country, right? And then didn't play out, and then they leave. And now you're sitting there like, oh, right. And then, God, even who would have thought Jalen Wilson would still be at Kansas, dude? Like, right? Like, it's disgusting. So I think back to my analogy earlier, 2019 and 2020 Michigan football, and Harbaugh, like the team had the talent, right? Maybe a couple guys had to leave. That was more ego issue. I hate talking about coaching staff changes because I like this staff a lot, right? But there's got to be something, some sort of spark or something to just rejuvenate a culture. Or like, again, like I said, I feel like they know they're going to lose. Like there's just something missing. Everybody made fun of the Michigan football team in 2021 for putting up how are you going to beat Ohio State today, and the way they were talking. But that was just them affirmation, believing, buying into what they were doing. So I don't know if this is something you fix overnight or flip a switch. I'm not ready to put Juwan on a hot seat or anything like that. But hey, they missed the tournament and the NIT comes calling. Are they going? Is the benefit of playing basketball there? Is that going to be, I guess I don't know. Like, does that hurt the brand? I mean, I don't know how you handle that this time around.
It is really interesting, and I feel like it wouldn't be harmful unless someone got injured or something like that. That's the only real risk. But I think one of the biggest benefits of the NIT is to get your younger guys experience. And at this point in the season, Doug McDaniel and Terrace Reed have gotten quite a bit of experience in meaningful games. And I don't know if playing in the NIT would really benefit Michigan all that much. I don't know if there's really anything for them to gain from doing it other than to maybe sell a few more tickets and pack out Chrysler a few more times before the offseason comes. But I don't really see that much of a benefit.
Josh, you're old enough like me to remember the 2004 NIT champions.
Right.
I mean, if Michigan even goes and wins, do you celebrate? Like, it's a different set of expectations now.
Yeah. It's such a nothing tournament. I mean, you can't really celebrate it because, everyone else is going to be like, well, we're in the tournament, Michigan State will be in the tournament. Ohio State probably won't, but that's another thing. But
there we go. Michigan versus Ohio State in the NIT championship.
It could very well happen. So be careful what you wish for. But that's such a tough thing because, like Brock said, it's like, it doesn't necessarily hurt Michigan to play in it, but do they want to play in it? That's kind of the thing. And I don't think, if you're living by this for competitors only mantra that they preach, you don't duck an NIT, you kind of just face it and take it and go. But I don't know. Yeah. It's like Brock said too. It's like, I don't know what they gain from it either, Right. So do you go, I mean, I guess it can afford you to go deeper in your rotation. But I mean, for a guy like Hunter Dickinson, it doesn't really do anything for you. I mean, I guess, for Jet too. I mean, doesn't really do anything. So, yeah, that's an interesting thing. I mean, personally, I think they should. I mean, at least just do it, and get some extra, stuff under your belt. I mean, it's not going to do anything grand scheme of things, but it'll at least give these guys, if that return next year, a reminder of that the NIT isn't good enough, and you want the tournament and beyond that, because those guys also have Sweet 16 berth to look back to as well. So that's kind of a big epic swing from one year to the next. So yeah, it's really tough. It's tough, but ultimately it's going to be Juwan's decision, and we'll see.
This is crazy. Sorry, Brock. I pulled up the 2014, right? They were 23-11, 8-8 in the Big Ten. Oh God. And then, but back to what we were talking about earlier about this roster having Hunter, Jet, Kobe, right? Top minute getters for this team: Daniel Horton, Bernard Robinson Jr., Lester Abram, and a freshman by the name of Deion Harris. Yeah, so it's a flashback.
That's a flashback.
Brock, I cut you off, so go ahead before I say my next thought.
I was just going to say that I think Michigan is staring in the face of probably its worst nightmare, and that is Kobe Buffkin playing his way into a potential draft pick and having a real option of leaving, and at the same time not making the tournament, and either playing or not playing in the NIT. That's beside the point, but it's so strange to me how Buffkin's blossomed and come into his own, and yet Michigan's not having the team success it normally is, and they could lose Buffkin to the draft and not make the tournament. I feel like that's got to be the worst case scenario at this point in the season, would just be losing Buffkin and missing out on the tournament, and then next year you're looking around for another shooting guard.
Yeah, Doug and Kobe back next year. That's Michigan's best backcourt in a long time.
Right? Yeah, probably since Burke and Hardaway.
100%. I didn't want to say their names, but yeah, that's and guard play is so, I think that's kind of what's frustrating too, is like guard play is so important in college basketball. And it felt like kind of what was missing last year with, being able to go into Hunter inside and him being able to kick out, was not having the guards. And you've added Jet and Kobe. And like you said, it's like, why isn't this working? And I think it's just the swings that happen when the lineup changes come in and the bench come in. I mean, how many times did we go, oh, what is this lineup? Right. And the plus minus didn't necessarily always play that out, but just the games, there was always these peaks and valleys, and the valley, unfortunately, tended to be at the end of the game.
Yeah. So. And one more thing on that. Yesterday, Michigan opened up. They had, 13 points in 12 minutes or something like that. It was bad. Yeah. And that was a bad valley at the beginning of the game that if they could have avoided, they wouldn't have been in overtime. And then all of a sudden they flipped the switch and they looked like a Final Four team during those couple minutes.
Last 6 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
Into the first half and beginning of the second half, they looked unstoppable on offense. I tweeted out they had like 29 points in 7.5 minutes or something like that. And it's just unbelievable how they can go from so low to looking like one of the better teams in the country in the span of a couple possessions.
Because they're not bad. Or they shouldn't be bad, or however you want to categorize it, right? That, I don't know. That's the frustrating thing. So I'll be interested to see. I hope they get into the tournament for obvious reasons.
Right.
And then, I mean, for all the back and forth of meeting expectations or not, making the Sweet 16 last year erased a lot of bad from the regular season, right? So whether it's going deep into the Big Ten tournament, maybe even winning it, something crazy like that, getting into the tournament, winning potentially a game or two there, that can do enough. Again, whatever your goal is going to be for this offseason, whether it's staying the course, believing in what you're doing, culture change, roster shakeup, staff, whatever it is, I think it's going to be easier not having to decide whether you're going to the NIT or not. So obviously it starts with Rutgers. We'll go from there, but we got a few more minutes. So why don't we touch on football, because it's a year-round sport. always, right? Not a lot of spring has happened yet because, like Brock, the boys were on spring break. But Josh, you've posted some intel rumbling, some good things about freshmen. Obviously, it's a lot of t-shirts and shorts. Nobody's ready to crown anybody, but I guess early rumblings versus going into the rest of spring, what's kind of sticking out to you right now?
I think what's sticking out to me the most is that they're kind of just easing into things. They were doing it last week too. There's very, there were days where they were just doing helmets and shorts, and then one day they were doing pads. And I think what's clear is that they're not into the guts of this thing yet. They're kind of easing into things, doing a lot of conditioning and lifting and stuff like that. So they're still going at it. But, the one big takeaway that I have is that I don't really have a takeaway yet. I don't think, I don't think there's enough to really say. I mean, we've talked about on the boards, Cameron Calhoun and Jair Hill, the coaching staff are excited about them. But I think that was a combination of what they felt like they had when they signed them, as well as kind of seeing them progress, over the winter conditioning. So, those would be two guys I'm going to be keeping an eye on moving forward. But I'm not really sure when things are going to start to be kicked up a notch today, because today was the first day back after a week off. They were kind of off and on 2 weeks prior, but today was a helmets only practice. Tomorrow is a meetings and lift, and I'm not sure what the rest of the week looks like. But we're not quite into the heavy hitting stage just yet, but that'll be coming soon. So I think I'll have more of a better grasp of what's going on and who's kind of excelling more. But I think that, this time last year, I know Harbaugh was talking about a lot of guys being injured, and that doesn't really seem to be the case. There's a couple of guys that have some nagging stuff that they're going through, like Miles Hinton and Drake Nugent both had off-season surgeries, but that was prior to anything. So, but there's really no one, obviously Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum both had off-season surgeries too, so they're going to be limited. But overall team health is pretty good, and that's been I guess that's my takeaway then. I've talked myself into a takeaway is that team health is pretty good right now. I've been told multiple times that health is good, so knock on wood it stays that way. But so far so good.
When you follow the yellow brick road,
exactly.
Get to the wizard. Yeah.
I talk myself in circles most of the time anyway. So
again, I'm making fun of you because I do the same thing. So Brock, same question, sir. Again, we don't know a lot. We're not going to pretend we do. Nobody's here to make any huge proclamations, but whether any opinions have changed or have stayed the same, spring picking back up, what are you kind of looking at?
I'm really interested. Last time we got together, I talked about the cornerback 2 position. This time I'm really interested in seeing how the offensive line plays out. It's really interesting to me because Michigan has probably one of the deepest offensive lines ever. I would say it's
ridiculous.
It's got to be top 3 in the country, and in program history, it's got to be up there too. And they just have so many guys who've been just waiting and waiting and waiting for their turn. Like Giovanni Alhadi, is he a redshirt junior this year?
Yes,
and I think he's a redshirt junior, and he hasn't. Has he started only a handful of games? Only because of injury?
He filled in for Keegan a few times last year and did really well. Like if Keegan had not come back this year, Alhadi would have started and there wouldn't have been any concern. Like he graded out really well last year. So
they have a lot of guys that I think would be surefire starters on like 10 other Big Ten teams. It's unbelievable to me how deep they are. And they still have people coming in from the portal wanting to play offensive line. And you're kind of sitting there looking and you're like, where are we going to put these guys? Because
as a redshirt sophomore.
I
couldn't. Dude, the COVID years messed me up so bad.
Yeah, I know.
I have no sense of how long guys have been here. He also looks like he's 25 years old. So that,
yeah, he's a big dude. He's
oh
a
my
big
God.
dude.
Yeah.
Funny.
I agree with you 100%. I kind of lean towards O-line anyway. I just like O-line stuff. I've been penciling in a couple transfers into starting positions. Drake Nugent is one, which a lot of people were kind of hesitant at first, but man, Pro Football Focus loves Drake Nugent, man. Holy cow.
Like, enamored with him. Yeah.
I had it like, I think this is where I think it's going to be Nugent. I do. He's not Olu. He's definitely not Olu. They think he's Olu. Like they really, I mean, he's consistently top 10 interior offensive lineman, all these things coming out. I'm like, huh. And I've thought Henderson was going to be the left tackle just because he came in regardless of what happened at the guard spot. They kind of said they might see him as a tackle. It just made sense to me. His pass grade's good, blah, blah, blah. Him not being there till summer.
That changes things.
Yeah, man. Nugent, I think, and hint, like, all we talked about last spring was how can Olu get acclimated to this offense? The terminology, the group, and how hard that was going to be, and how much praise he got for learning the playbook and blah, blah, blah. Not that, an injury is going to stop you from that, but as much as Nugent's been maybe raised up by some of the analytical guys, right? I don't like that he's not there yet. And Henderson not being there till the summer. Again, if we're talking about a left tackle spot, Hinton, I kind of already felt like was maybe lagging behind Barnhart and Jones because they started last year, right? So when Harbaugh came out and mentioned, like you said, El Hadi, Percy, right, Bounds, like these dudes that have been waiting in the wing, not that the transfers were promised anything, I know they weren't, but maybe they're not going to be loaded with transfers starting. Like it's going to be fun to watch this battle play out, and I have no idea how they're going to pick them. We've talked about that before, the top 5 O-line versus, I mean, good God, how do you pick 5 from a group of 16, 17 dudes that could
that's
arguably start?
It's unbelievable. Ridiculous. And I feel like with Zinter and Keegan, those are 2 guys that have been on Joe Moore Award winning O-lines 2 years in a row. So to even consider taking them out of the starting lineup, even if someone else is arguably better, it's like, how can you justify that when they've been like the staple of your team for the last 2 years? So it's going to be very, very interesting, I feel like, to see how this plays out.
I think Zinter might be the first guard chosen in the draft next year. Like, Zinter's stupid good. Keegan gets a little underrated at times, but like, if El Hadi challenged him or whatever, Keegan might slide to left tackle, but you're not taking him out of the starting lineup either.
No.
Right. So those 2 are in. Maybe there's going to be transfers out in spring. I don't want to even get into that situation. We're just going to ignore what I was starting to trend towards there. Scholarships. But right now it's a great mess. It's a great mess. So yeah, I'm excited to watch that. I'm not concerned about the Corum and Edwards stuff. We knew those injuries were going to be there. I'm still really interested in the wide receivers, and specifically Sharon Moore running the offense. So everyone keeps asking if they're going to open up the passing game. No, not more than they have. But you could make the argument, if JJ connects on some of those deep balls in the first 8 or 9 games of the year, the passing game would have been opened up statistically, right? A couple extra touchdowns a game, a couple 300-yard games. So it might be as simple as the same scheme and just maybe connecting on guys. But I know Cornelius is going to be there. I know Roman's going to be there. How they use Roman, does Clemens, because I'm obsessed with Clemens. The dude he just looks the part, man. He should be a wide receiver 1. But can he be if Roman's outside? Is it Tyler Morris actually of that group that comes in? Does AJ Henning finally burst out? Where's the best receiver on this team? Donovan Edwards, Colston Loveland, right? Like, I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic because that wide receiver group's been churning the last few years. And we're like, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year. At some point, I mean, and they got another crop of 3 freshmen too that are really good. So yeah, that's still my thing. I want to see if some rumblings start coming out about what kind of wide receiver pairings they're doing. But I don't know. We'll see. Spring games April 1. Right. So yeah. we'll be there, obviously covering that, and we'll be covering from now until then. Make sure, again, spring football promo, buy 1 month, get 4 free. Go over to michigan.rivals.com. We will continue to cover spring practice as well as the basketball season that could be saved depending on if you believe Brock and I with 2 wins or Josh with a tournament win. I guess we'll have to see. But I'm going to go out on that prediction. How far does Michigan go in the Big Ten tournament, and do they get into the tournament? Josh, you go first.
I think they'll beat Rutgers, but I don't think they're going to beat Purdue. I'm picking Purdue to win the whole thing, the tournament, the whole tournament, not NCAAs, but
they got to get more than 4 banners at some point, man.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be tough. Purdue would be tough, but I do believe they'll beat Rutgers, but even then, just to win over Rutgers, I still don't think that'll get it done. So, even
and then do they go to the NIT?
Do they?
I
don't know. But, I don't know. But yeah, predicting win over Rutgers for
Rutgers and lost to Purdue. All right. Yeah. He went safe. Brock, what do you got?
I have to go safe as well. I do think they'll beat Rutgers. Hopefully it's not a close game, or else we know how that'll turn out. So Michigan might have to go 10 points or more to keep it comfortable. But yeah, I think they'll take care of Rutgers, and then I think they match up well with Purdue, but I just can't predict a win over a top 5 team for Michigan at this point in the season. So that'll put them at like 18-15 or something like that on the year. And then I think they would accept an NIT bid. So whatever that may present, we would see, but that's where I've got them.
You guys are cowards. You went chalk, and I'm going to do the same thing. I think they beat Rutgers, and I don't think they beat Purdue. And actually, I'm not that super confident they beat Rutgers, even, to be honest with you. I
mean, I make that with very, like trepidation. It's like I'm not even confident.
I hate that Thursday. It's Thursday noon game they got, right, too?
Yeah.
I don't think they would accept an NIT. I don't know if they would utilize impending NBA decisions as an excuse or how they would maneuver that, but I don't think they would take an NIT bid. I've got a whole host of reasons for that, again, in terms of culture build and whether they want to admit it or not. If they went to the NIT and did not perform exceptionally well in that, oh man, what a brutal offseason that would be. So yeah. I think we're 1 or 2 games away from their season ending. Personally, I hope we're wrong, because I like Michigan basketball. I like covering Michigan basketball, and I hope we get more opportunities to do it. But obviously, make sure you keep an eye on us going into Thursday. We will have that Big Ten tournament game, Michigan and Rutgers, covered. So for Josh and Brock, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. This was the latest episode of Hail to the Podcast.